Hi, good morning, everyone. This is attempt 3 of recording this video. The first video was my phone was like, "This is way too long. We hate you. You're putting everyone to sleep," and it shut off. And the second one, I'm not sure what was happening. So say a little mantra for me that this all works out. Okay, so the past 2 weeks we've been talking about microsystems and the butterfly effect. And so I just wanted to touch on a little bit about both of those before I kind of go in depth to what our objectives were for the last 2 weeks. So, Lykoski wrote this definition of clinical microsystem, and it's on 33 of that article that healthcare clinical microsystem can be defined as a small group of professionals who provide care to discrete populations of patients. So, but to be honest, in contrast to that, I really like what Nelson et al. Said on page 368 of that study about the patient and the caregiver being a microsystem of their own, and how that when we think about microsystems on the unit, we not only have to think about that microsystem for the patient, as well as the endocrinologist outpatient, the PCP outpatient who may not have privileges at the hospital that that patient came to, the neurologist if they're an MS patient. All of the things that go together for that patient is also a microsystem, and how we get that microsystem to function in conjunction with that patient's stay to be able to create fluid continuum of care for that patient's benefit was really, I enjoyed thinking about that and the dynamics of that. I also got a ton out of the Chadwick article from last week, and I kept saying all week that I've been writing notes for class in black and notes for work in white in all my notes, because there are things that really struck me that were like a little too on the nose for me about things that I need to change in my leadership style and how I've been approaching my own microsystem. So one of the objectives for this week was to really think about what your current microsystem is and what your future microsystems might be. And my current microsystem is that I am one of 2 nighttime supervisors on a 300-bed long-term care facility. And right now our census is 168. We have 5 units, each with usually an LPN, but once in a while an RN, and then anywhere from 1 to 3 aides depending on what the census is. And we've been kind of in the middle of this tension that we talk about, that feeling of discomfort, right? Where things are kind of coming to a head and there's going to be a change coming. So I'm trying to absorb this idea of accepting the change and adapting to the change as it happens, but also influencing the consequences of the change. And so I'm trying to kind of soak that in and make sure that I'm leading to changes that are going to be beneficial for our patients and our staff. So that's been really interesting as I've done the readings this week. And going along with that grassroots leadership. So being able to trust my nurses and trust my aides to make valuable decisions is a real challenge, especially in the setting where I am, because status quo is a powerful driver. And so to be able to affect change in that setting is a challenge, mostly because of will. The kind of changes that I would be interested in making aren't necessarily a cost issue, which is usually with large health systems, that's the problem, right? Everything costs money, and so that's one of the major barriers, along with will. But for me, it's kind of on a smaller level. We also talked about one of the things that I got out of the Chadwick article that I think I'm going to use going forward is the Jefferson scale that was established at the Jefferson Medical Center near Philadelphia by Mohammad Reza Hojat, MD. And I hope to use that to be able to gauge where we are now and where we want to be. And I think just having a concrete idea of that will be really helpful. So I'm excited about that. Also, the idea of cooperation and competition and how to make that connection for people and how that is intrinsic and how to make that work for the benefit of the microsystem, I think is something I'm looking forward to exploring. And not just that, but also that there's going to be people who disagree with changes that I make or that I want to affect, and that I can't necessarily be concerned about that. So the idea that you agree to disagree and that things are going to not be universally accepted, but the change still influences the microsystem is something I have to be more comfortable with. I think that comfort with conflict is a challenge for me, and so I look forward into learning more throughout this course about how to embrace that. I also really enjoyed learning about James Reason's work with the Swiss cheese theory in terms of, so specifically in terms of meta errors, but also just how things break down and how that causes a problem. That was really interesting to me. And so specifically, I had a patient come back from the hospital with a new oxygen order. And, I knew that she came back with that. The supervisor from the 11 to 7 shift had told me. I understood that this was a new order. And so the nurse called down and said that her sats were dropping. And so I, went upstairs to try and see what was going on. No concentrator in the room. So this is a great example of that Swiss cheese theory, because there's a new order for oxygen. So this is a well-established patient with us, had never been on oxygen before. So there's a new order from the hospital. Okay, we know about this. But there was somehow didn't get to the nurses, or the nurses thought that the supervisor was going to get a concentrator, and that didn't happen. The aide maybe wasn't told that they're now on oxygen when they hadn't been before, so that's a breakdown. And now it had an imposition on the patient care. So I think it's really important to recognize how all those things can happen. And even though in the moment it doesn't seem like a big deal, it did in fact create lapse in patient care that you might be able to use as a example of the butterfly effect as well. So I think in summary, I'm just really excited to see what this coming week brings, and I'm excited to see what else we're going to be learning that can help me to support my patients and my staff. I'm really excited about that. I hope you all had a good week, and I'm excited about seeing all of your blogs and to see what input you have about mine. Have a good week. Bye.